Thank you for listening to the Allender Center podcast. I'm Dr. Dan Allender.
And I'm Rachel Clinton Chen. We're fiercely committed to providing hope and healing to a fragmented world.
And restoration for the heart.
Thank you for joining us. Let's get this conversation started.
One of the most important things is to have couples that you know and love and respect, and you get to watch. You get to be part of, but you get to watch. And one of those couples that we are sad to say we don't spend as much time with, certainly in the COVID era, it's Paul and Sara Steinke. And Paul, gosh, to go through his title is so complex, but let me just take a whack or two at it. It's the Vice President of Students and Alumni Development, or the Dean of Students and Alumni, or what more precious category that we often refer to Paul as our field abbot. And Paul has been working with the Seattle School of Theology and Psychology for about, I would say, close to about 140 years. Would you not? Yeah, because we do dog years, and it's been well over 20. So, and Sara, who is a private practitioner, therapist in private practice, but as well a yoga instructor and a poet. So between the two of them, we have watched this beautiful couple for
oh my goodness,
decades.
A long time, way before children. You guys had, yeah.
And again, it's a joy to have you with us. And what we want to talk a bit about is we've looked at the two of you on so many levels with so much respect. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that we note is that the two of you have created poetic, living rituals to mark not just your lives, but the lives of the institution.
Naming your children.
So many beautiful things that we wanted to talk today, particularly in the COVID era, as the importance of rituals. In many ways, rituals are symbolic scenes and processes that hold a high amount of story together in a condensed form. In that sense, it's highly poetic. So love for the two of you to just begin to talk with us and help us, grow our ability to honor and grow those kind of patterns and rituals that enhance and grow a marriage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's lovely.
Yeah, as we were thinking about what this conversation might hold with you two, who we've also watched and absolutely learned from in the 140 dog years that we've been around, is one of the things that has come up is this idea that the way we started continues to be the way we move forward. And back in the day when Paul and I were courting each other, one of the ways we did that was through music. And Dan, you said this condensed sort of poetic way of holding something. I think of music as well, where we would listen to some of our favorite musicians and just spend time touching our own heartache and joy and grief and imagination through music. And I see that as something that has continued throughout, not only when we were dating, would we use the excuse of listening to an entire album just to sit next to each other and see how close we could get to kissing. But but now we use we use music, right? We bring our children into the language of music, and some of my absolute joy as the mother of Pierce and Sela and Elle has been to see Paul, who is a musician at heart. Underneath all of those titles, he is a musician. But to see him teach our children the language of music, and how one of the things he'll say is, "What do you hear? What do you hear? What is this instrument? And what is this instrument doing? And what do you hear?" And I think of ritual in that condensed form as just a way to be able to touch. So what do you hear? What do you experience? What do you know being here now? So that's music is what comes to mind. And even now, we don't have the expanse of hours to sit and touch and listen, but we have this language of music built into our relationship, so that he can turn on a song and it can communicate quite a bit in that condensed form. We only have a couple minutes. I mean, frankly, we have this moment and now that's gone. So to be able to touch music together and through music to be able to touch ourselves and each other has been extraordinary.
Well, Paul, I would love for people to hear not necessarily your voice, but that would be beautiful in and of itself. But just a little bit about your musical background, because when I found out what your major was, I think you were the first that I knew in person.
Yeah. It's a sort of an uncommon. I don't meet many people with majors like I had. So I think, for me, music was certainly something that helped connect me to my body, helped connect me to life, outside of often heartache, or let me say it this way, sometimes it helped connect me to heartache. It was probably one of the reasons why music draws me to itself. Is in many ways, when I was a young kid, it was where I first began, one of the first places where I began to hear God's call to me. And it was at that point we were only listening to Christian music at my home. And so Keith Green is somebody who still comes to mind and will still sing all the time. But my family was a very musical family, and my mother was a piano player, yes. My father was a singer, and they actually met. She was playing the piano for him, singing at a wedding. Wow. And we all, I grew up, all my brothers and sisters, we grew up around the piano, singing around the piano with my mom playing. That was frequent for us at large family gatherings. I have 8 brothers and sisters, and so large family gatherings. And when we talk in-laws and nephews and nieces, it's a brood. But that carried through college, certainly, where I learned to sing opera, and that learning to sing opera is not so different from learning to sing on Sunday morning when Mom is saying to me, I need to be able to hear you above my own voice. If I can't hear you above my own voice, you're not singing loud enough. That was a Sunday morning statement. All to say, yeah. So I grew up with opera. Opera, though, was not what I loved. I didn't love opera. I actually didn't love singing. I didn't love all the practice that was involved. It was so far removed from people. For me, and this is where I met Sara. I met Sara in a choral class, the University of Singers, and a group called the University of Singers. And I love choral music. Fell in love with choral music. And choral music is, I was just listening to it this week. There's a couple pieces by an English composer by the name of John Tavener. 2 hymns to the Mother of God is what they're called. And they're lovely dissonance. Another tune, a setting of Psalm 116, I Love You, Lord, which is written by an English composer by the name of Jonathan Harvey. And both of these, and where it begins with a sense of orientation. I love the Lord piece by John Harvey. Begins with a sense of orientation, moves into dissonance, lament, disorientation, much like the psalm does itself. And then when it comes back together at the end of this piece of music, there's a sense that now it comes, the harmonies now include a fuller sense of dissonance, a capacity to hold a sense of dissonance before turning to rest. Mm-hmm. And for me, that marking that path is really what ritual helps us do. Ritual helps us begin at a place of orientation, helps us touch on dissonance and disorientation, and then come back together, hopefully with a sense of having been able to metabolize or to incorporate the dissonance with some sense, with something new. Reorientation almost sounds like you return to the beginning. I don't necessarily have another word in the moment here, but just to say there's something new now that you can rest in because it holds both harmony and the dissonance.
Well, and to say, as I have said quite often, my voice could be literally the abysmal opposite of yours. I mean, you are on the bell-shaped curve, 3 standard deviations above the mean. And so am I, just on the other tail. So, for those...
Yeah, I've sang with you, and that has not been my experience. I know that's your experience. I don't want to invalidate your experience, but just let me say that's not been my experience.
Okay. But think about where we last sang together was at a student orientation where you had my son Andrew and I sing one of the songs from Best in Show, God Loves a Terrier. And for whatever reason, because that song moves me so deeply, you're right. There is something melodic that arises, but in most normal uses of my voice. So when you think about how music gets played as part of the ritual that grows your marriage, how does it actually show itself?
I think there's songs, there's soundtracks for our marriage. I mean, I think that's where it begins, and that's some of where. For all of us, each of us has a soundtrack. I think it's, I've had friends where we've told the stories of our lives through our soundtrack. Don't tell me what was the music that was resonating within you when you were 10. What about 13, and why that song during that season? And wow, what a window. Well, the same can be said of any sort of marriage or relationship. And Sara and I have songs where they just begin to play it. Over the Rhine is certainly a band that has followed us. Sade, for sure. But I would say too, Sara was the one who, she grew up with Motown. And so I don't have an appreciation for Motown, but Sara really gave me an appreciation for Motown. Part of it was because she danced, right? And how she would, and man, any opportunity to see Sara dance, I'll turn on Motown. So, and then to dance with Sara. And I know that's not necessarily everybody's story, but for me, for sure, I love to see Sara dance. Sort of a long distance mentor of mine, Dr. Cornel West, talks about Black and brown people music, specifically Black music, speaking to some of the funk of our existence. And I love that languaging. And Sara and I don't trust music that doesn't speak to the funk of our existence. And so that shows up. And I'm deeply grateful for how Sara has brought that into. So all that to say, it doesn't talking about music, even thinking about the music that we play is it very close, brings tears, brings laughter, brings dancing, brings lovemaking, brings, so I think it's a song comes on. We keep music on all the time.
Well, and the notion that any ritual holds something of the past. I think that's one of the elements that has to be there.
Yeah.
And to have music, as you're describing, that passes through eras, and not just era as in the 60s or the 70s, but eras in the particularity of your life. I think for us, there's something very equivalent in terms of walking. Like, that's one of our rituals that occurs, at a certain time, pretty much every day. I would almost say there are certain questions we ask each other almost based on the geography of what we're passing. I usually ask about your dreams around that first turn, usually about what's ahead somewhere around the mailboxes. So, I mean, a ritual holds something solid, particularly in the midst of the kind of craziness that we're all in the middle of in this era. So what I want to do is to look to both of you women to say, how has poetry, how has your own rituals, Becky, linked with what Paul and I are both saying?
Well, I know you're a poet, and I would love for you to go first.
Oh.
That was sneaky, Becky.
Wow.
Yeah, I was just sitting back in my chair thinking, oh, Becky's going to say what's on her mind. Yeah. So how does that link with how I experience things? That arc. I think in poetry. I think in music, I resonate with that arc that Paul brought out, this orientation, disorientation, and reorientation, that it honors the dissonance, and the places that cause us. One of our favorite musicians is Jason Herod, little known by a lot of people, but beloved to us. And in one of his songs with Brian Funk, actually, when they were together, there's this idea of stop and stare, stop and consider. And that's what ritual asks me to do. So even as I'm laboring to write a poem, or I'm living a poem, where do I find the invitation to stop and stare, to stop and consider? And do I respond to that, or do I dissociate from that? And for me, those are really the two choices I face. So ritual helps hold this idea that it's not forever, that I can touch heartache and it's not forever, that I can touch lament and it's not forever. This morning on the porch, that's one of the places that Paul and I really connect with each other, is now that we're in COVID land, right? The kids don't have to get up early for school, and they won't have to get up early for school for a good long time. So they sleep in. And that's one of the places that Paul and I have been able to connect with each other, is on the porch. And to be able to allow the porch to hold what draws us, what speaks to us, what our questions are of each other, but also our rawness and our dissonance, and that might be honored. That is not just fighting, is not for fighting's sake, but may it be unto connection. Dissonance is not for dissonance sake, but that we begin to recognize the harmonies that we've been singing for a long time, and now we get to play with them. These containers that allow us the momentum, the imagination to not just keep plugging ahead in our days, but to be able to consider what am I feeling now? And I wonder what is being made between us, and what is being created between us. What is Paul what is his experience? And can I just sort of step back and allow space for his experience to be radically different than my own? And then as we begin in our musicianship and our poetry in our condensed way, how do we recognize the dissonance, and what will we make now? And what can we create? What do we have imagination for? What are the images that stand out to us? And one of the things that I find in my own life, and one of the reasons that I have chosen Paul as my life partner, is we honor a language that's above and below and beneath and around words, a language of senses, and what do we hear and see and taste and feel and touch is also a ritual, so that when we are experiencing dissonance with words, that we can say, can I touch you? Can we just touch? And that's another way that we anchor back in and create something new from the dissonance. And I do that with my poetry. When I sit down to write a poem, I think, what have been the thin places? What have been the places of dissonance? What are the harmonies that I'm beginning to hear differently now? So those are some of my thoughts, and to add to that, just that there's definitely a place for body, that our body carries so much story, and our bodies together create and communicate something that our bodies apart create and communicate. Our bodies with our children, it's a totally different music than our bodies without our children. And how do we invite our children into our music? How do they invite us into theirs, which I think is almost constant, like this constant invitation to help and inspire and support them. But then how do we invite them into what Paul and I make together, and what we see, and what do they see? And then the voices become multiple in whatever song or music we're swimming in.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love how you talk about the body and the music and the touch, and then the symphony. For us, getting married in January 1977 and having our first daughter, Annie, in 1980, like, we have kind of returned to our beginning years of marriage, since we're so disconnected, unfortunately, with our children during this time and our grandchildren. So we are very embodied together. I mean, we have continued this ritual of getting up before 5 and walking before 6, and then working out at 7:15, and then I do yoga and you work out more. And so they've been kind of guardrails. But as you talk about your music, I'm like, dang, I really want to make a playlist of the music of ours, because Marvin Gaye was what I was playing when Dan came over, and I was kind of
I was already smitten, but playing Marvin Gaye outside, the white pair of jeans she had on, and this beautiful top, and it's like, I mean, right now I'm back. I am back in another world.
I know it. So,
but that's what a ritual holds. It isn't just a repetition. It's something that holds so much meaning that it spills over, in that sense of, kind of an Old Testament sense of the oil of delight and praise flowing over your head and your beard. And that's that kind of, it's delicious, it's gorgeous. But for couples who have only habits, and to contrast, to say, we've got a lot of habits that aren't really particularly rituals, but rituals where you have intent, you have meaning from the past that in some ways prepares you for what the day holds, or the week holds, or the period of time ahead. And that's one of the reasons why, for us, that walk in the morning, oh my gosh, I've not been able to walk the last 2 days just due to a small injury. And every time she goes out to walk without me, which I want her to do, but every time it's like, oh my gosh, how am I going to live with the particularity of this day and not have that connective link that you're putting words to? And so a habit can become a ritual, but rituals do require some creativity to be able to say, what's our ligaments that hold us from past into the future that we can share in the moment? And that, again, if you had counsel for couples who are saying, I don't have any rituals like what you guys are talking about, but, we have a habit of I do the dishes, she does the cooking and blah, blah, blah. How would you invite others to begin to see their lives within that purview of a ritual, but also how to create?
I think I think boredom is really fantastic. and when you hit that boredom of, okay, this is I'm chopping the vegetables yet again, and that moment where it's like, I don't think I can chop another vegetable. May that dissonance lead us into infusing that daily moment with meaning. So that it becomes rhythmic, it becomes cathartic, it becomes our burdens, our daily habits. I believe what differentiates habit from a ritual is not the epiphany of it, but the intention behind it. Mm-hmm. So I remember one day cleaning our house and thinking, oh dear God, please help me if I have to pick up another sock and throw it down in the laundry. This is when the children were at school. And I was going room by room and recognizing there was just this bitterness in me about what I was doing. And having the thought of what if every time I picked up my beautiful Elle's sock that I said a prayer? Mm. What if every time I picked up another apple core from downstairs, I remembered a Thanksgiving? Mm-hmm. And then, I had a talk with them at the end of the day because they need to clean up after themselves. But taking those moments of utter boredom, and even like that rhythmic, I think dissociation is very rhythmic. Like there's a way that we just get entrained with the boredom. And then there comes these moments of choice, right? We can choose to make this into a ritual, a way of connecting, or we can choose to infuse this moment, this habit, with yet more dissociation, more. What am I saying about my people, my children, my husband, as I am walking through the house? And is that what I want? Is that what I want to be saying? What am I saying as I'm sitting on the porch in the morning? Am I running through my day, or can I stay here in this moment and recognize the bird song of towhee and junco and chickadee? And can I hear the wind in the trees? And that's the sensuality piece again. So any habit, when we can connect with our senses, which connects us into the moment, then becomes this beautiful point of connection as we connect not only with our bodies and become embodied, but also connect with the bodies of the people around us, which even goes into the more than human world of what is your landscape, and can that also sing over you and sing meaning into every blessed moment. So a ritual is not something we do once or once a week, or, on our birthday. I think we all have our birthday rituals, what we do to celebrate ourselves. But that celebration can be moment by moment. And what's built ritual into our marriage is in recognizing that this is more than what we see on the surface. There's more happening here in this moment than what words can touch. But can we just pause? Can we stop and stare and consider, what are we making? What is singing over us? Where are the thin places that we encounter on our walks, in our yoga classes, as we listen to music? Yesterday, we took this day-long hike to Fort Flagler, and we were done. It was the end of the hike. We were all ready to make it back to the car. And then we saw a deer through these trees, and we followed the deer, and the deer allowed us to get close enough to them to knock some apples out of the apple tree, and they would go and eat the apples. Wow. And those moments of, did you see that? Did you see deer over there? What's over there? So those methodic, rhythmic places can open into a clearing of something new, something that we hadn't thought of before.
Well, when I think about one of the things that this COVID era has given us is I'm not on the road, and Becky has sort of taken me into our lawn, into the space around our house, to begin looking at flowers, planting, moving flowers, bushes. And there's just been, in so many ways, a new connection to the ground for me, that I'm much more fluid, faces, tasks, ground, body, much less. And so one of the things that we would, as we end, just to say to you as listeners, habits are fine. They sustain something of the process of living life. But what all of us have said is that there is something in the taste of that thin world between what is seen and unseen that we get to play. And we get to create something of a bridge in that. And every ritual that holds meaning for us, connects us, really is that bridge between what is seen and unseen, much like the Lord's table, much like taking bread and wine as a symbol of his death and resurrection. So we're inviting you as a couple, begin to mess with this. Let your heart ask, not with judgment, why haven't we developed rituals? But far more, what are the day-to-day sock picking up? What are the walks? What are the songs? I think that's going to be one of the things that we end up trying to do soon, is creating a soundtrack that fits both your life, my life, but our life as well. So to say to both of you, thank you. Thank you for the 140 years. And I am grateful for what I would consider to be another 140 ahead.
That's fantastic. I can't wait. I cannot wait. Think of the songs that we'll be able to listen to together.
God loves a terrier.
Yeah, God loves a terrier.
God loves a terrier.
Yes, he does.
Yes, he does. I'm not going to go any further. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Sara.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you both.
We hope this episode has been helpful. And if you would like to engage your marriage in other ways than this podcast, we'd love to be an ally with you. And one of the ways we're doing so is inviting you to a marriage conference that Kathy Lurzell and I will be teaching on October 10th. It's to awaken your heart to the longings that existed in your relationship and are meant to grow through your relationship.
And also, there's a marriage online course that launches October 13th. I'm just so proud of you and the team, and all the work that went into this course will help you discover how your personal stories shape your marriage story and find hopeful pathways forward, meaning to become even more intimate and more loving and kinder to yourself and to your spouse, and therefore to your marriage.
And finally, we've got date nights, which I don't know if we've ever had a date night, but we are part of a date night series where we're going to invite couples to an experience of reflection on their marriage in a more playful and engaging way, where you get to celebrate your relationship in greater gratitude and play. And look, all of these can be purchased separately, or you can bundle them together and get the conference for free. So go to theallendercenter.org/marriage to find out more about all three of these offerings.
The Allender Center podcast is produced by the Seattle School of Theology and Psychology.
If you'd like more information about the Allender Center, you can look at theallendercenter.org.